getting into niche specific human experiences.
Exploring this idea of why are women so drawn, queer straight women, to romance has been something I've really been obsessed about for a while. As a sex educator, it is something that really deeply intriguing to me, and I want to talk about it. But first, like, I so deeply appreciate Connor's response here. It is so clear the actors and creators of Heated Rivalry love and appreciate romance, and what a joy it is as a romance reader to be at a time where we're getting an adaptation that we deserve, right? So many movies don't even get, or so many books don't even get an adaptation, and so many of them that do get an adaptation, they're watered down. It is so incredible to just be in this moment and to be getting a show that was created by people who love romance, and it's going to be incredible. But okay, let me get back to what I was saying. As a sex educator, I think there's some really profound reasons why women are drawn to romance. And I know some people will be like, it's too hot, guys. Like, what more could you want? Sure, that's great. It's pretty surface level, but that's great. If that's what gets you there, that's what gets you to read the books and to get into romance. That's good. A little deeper, you might say it's too emotionally available men or emotionally growing men. That's also great, but I still think that's a bit surface level, because I think because really what I think it comes down to, and to understand this, we need like a little sex ed moment where our sexual health is kind of exists at this intersection of what's going on with us biologically, psychologically, and socioculturally. It's called the biopsychosocial model. And at that, and basically what it tells us is that our sexual health doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It's not just about what's going on in our body. It's about all of these things. It's about what's going on with us psychologically and all of the socio-cultural elements connected to sexual health. And a big piece of that is all of the cultural expectations and sexual scripts and sexual norms that have been ingrained to us as women in a patriarchal, and if you're in America, a patriarchal Christian society. And how does that impact, how do those things work together to impact who we are sexually, how we experience our sexuality, how we experience sex, our sexual health, all of those different things. And so what happens in an book is that you have two men, so you're able to experience a story without the baggage and trauma of shame and sexual shame and just hangups that comes from living in a society that did not raise us to be sexual beings, didn't create space to allow us to be sexual beings, didn't, show us nothing in the media that we saw growing up was rooted in sexual and social scripts that centered us as women and made us like the subjects of our own sexuality. It's always been we're the objects, and these are the norms you're expected to, or these are the expectations you're expected to follow. These are the perceived norms, and it's not about you at all. So when we read a romance story, an romance story, there's all of these layers that exist. There's all these layers that exist. And when it can make it very hard then to it can make it very hard even when the authors, and so many authors do this, romance authors are just incredible, and so many of them are intentionally subverting cultural norms in their stories and really rewriting narratives about what relationships look like, how a woman can experience her sexuality, all of these things. Like, they're doing such an incredible job of rewriting these things. But it can still be very hard to disconnect the sociocultural norms that have been ingrained in us when reading stories, even if the authors are subverting the norms. It can be very hard still for us to just experience the romance story and disconnect from those norms that have been deeply ingrained in us, the expectation, the shame, all of those things that have been deeply ingrained in us. But what happens in in an story is that you have two characters that, and within a patriarchal society, they don't have that same baggage, right? They are able to just be sexual. They've been told and given permission to be sexual their whole life. So you can you can encounter the same types of scenarios in an MM book than you see in an MF book, but you don't have that ingrained trauma, sexual trauma, whether that little t or big T, in yourself when you read those stories, so you can just experience it, and as you experience it can just change you. So there's an example I often think about in this is in one of the CU hockey books from Saxon James and in Eden Finley, one of the characters is like shy, got body issues, confidence issues, insecure, um, figuring out who he is, all of these things. It really embodies a lot of things that women probably often get portrayed at in a sexual scenario as like being inexperienced in these different things. And when I've encountered that same situation in an MF book and the FMC embodies those things, I really struggle with it. Like it's really hard for me just to exist in that story because it's bringing up all of these my own internal hangups, and it makes me just frustrated. Whereas when I read that CU book, I don't remember which one it was. Um, I think, maybe it's Seth. I'm like thinking what book it is. Okay, I'm gonna have to think about what book it is. Anyways, but when I read that book, Foster and Seth, right? Foster, yeah, it's whoever Foster's boyfriend is. Clearly, I need to reread it if I can't remember this. But anyways, when I read that book, I was able to just process these different, like the different things it brought up in my own life, because it was just like, oh, there was none of that extra baggage of him being of it being an FMC. I could just experience it for what it was at face value because of the equal playing field and the lack of socio cultural like trauma around and like sexual scripts around that type of a situation. So it just made it where I could just read the story, connect with the parts that were relevant to me, and like heal something in me because it was in an MM story without this cultural, sociocultural, like sexual baggage. And that's really profound. And I think that it's one of the key reasons why I think that women are so drawn to these stories, because they're allowed to just exist. They're allowed to just exist in these stories without this like almost re-traumatization in other books. Now, I want to be really clear specifically about Heated Rivalry of why I think Rachel Reed is just incredible is that she wrote the MM stories, but she still centered women. Like so many of the characters have women in their life that they're deeply connected to, that have true friendship with, and there's this strong female presence where a lot of MM stories have no female presence, which that is one of the things I get frustrated about. But I do think that there's a lot of power in reading an MM story as a woman, like that, goes beyond just that it's, two emotionally physically attractive people who you're drawn to, but I do think that there's a reason why we're drawn to it and why it can be very profound in reading. So excited to see this show, and I cannot wait. And let me know if you have some thoughts on why you think MM is so popular.